The sound of a stapler. That's how it began. Thwack. Right against my garage door. 6 in the morning. Pale light. I stood in my kitchen, sipping black coffee, when I heard it. Sharp. Deliberate. Followed by the flutter of paper in the breeze. I stepped out barefoot. Robe hanging loose, and there she was. Karen. The neighborhood's self-appointed commander. Ruler of lawns, fences, and paint shades. A woman who smiled like a realtor but moved like a drill sergeant. She pinned a bright orange notice to my garage with her manicured hand. Violation, it read, in letters so bold they looked angry. Morning, Karen, I said, rubbing my eyes. What's this one about? My grass grew half an inch? She turned, lips tight. Unauthorized modification, Mr. Harris, she said, her tone dripping authority she didn't have. You've been seen moving suspicious boxes in and out of your garage. HOA guidelines clearly prohibit concealed construction. I stared at her. Suspicious boxes? Karen, that's called moving my tools. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. We'll see about that. She took a photo of me, of the garage, of the sky if it had dared to look defiant, and strutted off toward her porch, heels tapping like a judge's gavel. I sighed, peeled off the notice, and tossed it in the trash. Another day in suburban paradise, but I should have known better. Karen wasn't the type to stop at warnings. By noon, she had gathered her neighborhood council, 3 retirees with too much time and too many binoculars. They stood on her lawn, whispering and pointing like birds of prey. I tried to ignore it, turning my wrench under the soft hum of my garage light. My old pickup sat half disassembled, gears and bolts scattered on the floor. Just a hobby, just peace. Then I heard it again, click, a phone camera shutter. I turned. Karen stood across the street recording, her lips curled into a smug half-smile. Maintenance work, huh? She called out. Strange time for it. You know, the HOA has the right to inspect anything that might affect community safety. Safety? I laughed. Karen, it's a truck, not a missile. Her phone tilted. I'll let the police decide that. That was her warning shot. Not a threat, but a promise. By evening, the orange notice was replaced with a red one. Escalated violation, stamped across the top. Fines listed. Threats of legal action printed below. I tore it down again, my patience thinning. Then came the text message. Anonymous. But I knew her style. Enjoy your garage while you can. HOA enforcement will handle it soon. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because deep down, I knew Karen was brewing something bigger. I went inside, poured another cup of coffee, and stared through the blinds. Her living room glowed across the street. Multiple silhouettes moving, gesturing wildly. Papers on the table. Laptops open. She was building a case, but against what? A man fixing his truck? That night I barely slept. The hum of crickets outside was broken by the faint buzz of an engine, a car idling at the end of my driveway. I peeked through the blinds. Black SUV, no logo. Tinted windows, my pulse quickened. And in that quiet dark, one thought hit me like a cold wave. Karen wasn't bluffing this time. She had called someone, and tomorrow morning my garage door wouldn't just be a door. It would be the stage for whatever madness she'd unleashed. I woke up to sirens. Not the distant kind that fade past your street. No. These were close. Real close. The kind that make your stomach drop before your brain catches up. Blue and red light flickered through the curtains, painting my living room in chaos. My coffee from last night still sat half full on the table, untouched, cold. Then came the megaphone voice, Daniel Harris. Step away from the garage! Hands visible at all times, I froze. They weren't just outside. They were everywhere. I peeked through the blinds and counted at least 6 squad cars lined up in front of my driveway. Officers in tactical gear crouched behind open doors, rifles drawn. Laser dots dancing across my front yard, and right at the edge of her porch, wrapped in a pink robe, phone in hand like it was a trophy, stood Karen. Her face was glowing. Like this was the moment she'd been waiting for her whole life. I stepped out slowly, hands raised halfway. This some kind of joke? I called, I'm just fixing my truck. Keep your hands where we can see them. Someone barked back. I blinked, sunlight burning my eyes. The officers looked tense, too tense, not like they were answering a noise complaint. One of them shouted again. We received reports of an armed suspect storing illegal equipment in a concealed structure. My jaw clenched. Karen. She actually did it. Behind me, my garage door stood open, exposing nothing but wrenches, toolboxes, and a half-finished engine. Not exactly a criminal lair, but when fear mixes with lies, reason doesn't stand a chance. I raised my hands higher, trying to speak over the sirens. There's nothing here. Check for yourself, Then, over the noise, I heard another sound, one that didn't belong. A low rumble. A car engine. Heavy, slow. Down the street, a black sedan approached, tires crunching over gravel. The police shifted, guns lowering slightly as they turned toward it. The vehicle rolled to a stop behind the line of squad cars, its door opening with deliberate calm. Out stepped a man in a dark suit, sunglasses reflecting the chaos. 2 state troopers followed, whispering quickly to the nearest officer. Karen's smile faltered. The suited man adjusted his cufflinks, eyes sweeping across the scene. The drawn weapons, the confused homeowner, the trembling neighbor with a phone. He spoke once, his voice even. "What in God's name is going on here?" The officer nearest to him stiffened. "Sir, we received intel about a possible armed suspect. That's the governor, you idiot." One of the troopers hissed suddenly, pointing toward the car. Every head turned. Karen's phone slipped from her hand, shattering on the pavement. The man who'd just stepped out wasn't a local cop, wasn't an agent. It was Governor Mitchell, standing in my driveway, face half-shadowed by the morning sun. He'd been en route to a private community visit, scheduled to meet the same HOA board that Karen served on. But her report, her urgent call for armed intervention, had sent the police scrambling. And when they heard suspicious mail, possible threat, they'd rolled in heavy. And now, the man they were protecting was the one they'd just aimed at. A silence fell across the entire street. Heavy, brittle. The governor looked at me, then at the garage, then at the trembling officers still gripping their rifles. "Lower your weapons," he said quietly. "Now." The red and blue lights faded to a confused stillness. Karen stood frozen on her porch, lips parting like she wanted to explain, but words refused to come. I didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her. The woman who thought she could weaponize power and got burned by her own fire. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen didn't retreat. She regrouped, and whatever came next, she'd make sure everyone in that neighborhood paid the price for her embarrassment. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the governor's car engine, still idling behind the police line. Then Governor Mitchell spoke again, quieter this time, but somehow sharper. "Whose call initiated this?" The lead officer hesitated, his jaw tensed, his radio crackled faintly. "Sir, the report came from a resident of this street. Claimed immediate threat. Possible firearm discharge?" There was no firearm. The governor cut him off. His tone didn't rise. It didn't have to. Every syllable carried the kind of power that could silence a room full of politicians, or in this case, a driveway full of armed men. "So who's the resident?" The officer's eyes flicked sideways. Toward the porch, Karen. Her name didn't need to be spoken. It was written all over her face. The color had drained from her cheeks, her lips trembling as she tried to form an excuse. "Governor Mitchell, sir. I was just— Step off the porch, ma'am," one of the troopers interrupted. His tone was all procedure now, cold, clean, and merciless. Karen blinked, like the world had stopped making sense. She took one hesitant step down, clutching her pink robe tighter. I didn't mean— You sent in a false emergency report that could have gotten someone killed," the trooper snapped. "You realize we had snipers on standby?" Her mouth fell open. "Snipers? You thought what?" I finally said. My voice came out low, rough but steady, the kind of tone I used to use when a storm was coming. "That you could call in guns because I was fixing my car?" She turned to me, her voice suddenly desperate. "You don't understand, Daniel. You're always pushing the rules. The garage was open past the regulation hours. It looked suspicious, regulation hours?" I barked a short, humorless laugh. "You weaponized a curfew, Karen." The governor's head tilted slightly, studying me now, not like a politician, but like a soldier who recognized another one. He stepped closer, scanning the broken phone, the paper notice still taped to my fence, the trembling woman before him. "What's really going on here?" he asked, and so I told him. About the fines, the harassment, the midnight notes from the HOA board. The time Karen's committee threatened to sue a veteran for flying his flag too large. The threats about paint color, mailboxes, fence heights, little tyrannies hidden behind polite letters. By the time I finished, Mitchell's jaw had set into a line of cold disbelief. He turned to his aide. "Get the HOA contact file." "I want names," Karen gasped. "Sir Governor, you can't just—" "I can," he said, eyes locked on her. "And I will." Then he looked back at me. "Mr. Harris, thank you for keeping calm under pressure. You've got more restraint than most men would have." I didn't answer. I just nodded once. The governor's convoy started pulling out a few minutes later. The police followed, the lights fading down the street until all that was left was the sound of tires rolling away and the faint echo of shame clinging to Karen's porch. She stood frozen, still clutching her robe, as the neighborhood doors began to open. Faces peeked out from behind curtains, people whispering, watching, judging. She'd wanted a show. She got one. Just not the ending she expected. As I turned to head back inside, I heard her whisper, too quiet for anyone but me. "You think this is over?" I paused in the doorway, looked back at her. "No," I said. "I think it's finally starting." The door shut behind me, and for the first time in months, my house felt like mine again, even if I knew the peace wouldn't last. Karen had been humiliated in public, and people like her don't lick their wounds quietly. For 3 days after the governor's visit, the street was silent. Too silent. Karen's house stayed dark most evenings, curtains drawn tight. The same woman who used to patrol the neighborhood with a clipboard and phone camera now moved like a ghost. Quiet. Invisible. But not gone. And I knew better than anyone. Quiet never means peace. It means planning. By Thursday, the retaliation started small. A bright orange notice of non-compliance fluttered on my mailbox. No HOA logo this time, just typed letters on cheap printer paper. Unauthorized structure. Garage activity under review. I smiled. She was trying to bait me. Friday morning, it escalated, my trash bins vanished. Saturday, my lawn service got an anonymous complaint that I was violating environmental water restrictions. By Sunday, every neighbor within 5 houses had received a HOA letter about heightened security concerns related to my property. Karen wasn't coming at me directly anymore. She was poisoning the well. That's how people like her fight, not with fists, but with rumors. They build cages out of gossip and rules, wrap them in community safety and wait for you to get tangled. But I'd been tangled before, and I'd learned how to cut my way out. At 6 a.m. Monday, I was already in my garage, the same one she'd tried to make a crime scene. On the workbench sat a small black case, my old GoPro system. I used to mount it on my truck during deployment training. Now, it had a new mission. I mounted cameras on my front porch, driveway, and fence line. Discreet, motion-triggered, time-stamped. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd collect the scorecard. By noon, the first knock came. 2 HOA inspectors. Matching vests, clipboards, fake professionalism. "Mr. Harris, we're here to assess your property for potential violations regarding..." I didn't let him finish. "Hold that thought," I said, holding up my phone. The screen displayed a live feed from the porch camera. Them, standing right there, being recorded. "Say it again, nice and clear for the record." They froze. One swallowed hard. "Sir, this is just a courtesy visit." "Courtesy?" I stepped closer, my shadow falling over the clipboard. "You show up without a warrant, without notice, on private property, and you call that courtesy?" The shorter one looked like he wanted to bolt. We'll reschedule." "You do that," I said, folding my arms. "Bring Karen next time. Tell her I've got a few things she might want to see." They left without another word. That night, I sat in my office, reviewing footage. At 11:23 p.m., my driveway light flicked on. Someone, a slim figure, hooded, approached my fence and pinned something to it, then left. I walked outside slowly, barefoot, the concrete still warm from the day. The paper flapped in the soft breeze. It wasn't a letter this time. It was a picture. A blown-up photograph of my wife, taken from her morning jog. Under it, in bold marker, "Keep your house in line, or we'll handle it our way." For a moment, I just stood there, the paper trembling between my fingers. Then I felt it, that old familiar calm, the one that comes right before the storm. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry. I was focused. They'd made it personal. And that was their first mistake. Karen had turned this into a neighborhood war. But she forgot I've fought real wars. And unlike her, I don't lose ground twice. I went back inside, pulled open my laptop, and began typing an email to an old contact. Someone who owed me a favor from my Navy days. Subject line: "Need background on HOA board. Urgent." Because before I fought this battle, I needed to know exactly who I was fighting. The reply came faster than I expected. 3 hours after I sent the email, my phone buzzed. "A blocked number," I answered. "Daniel Harris?" A gravelly voice said, "This is Caldwell. You said HOA board background check?" "That's right," I said quietly, turning down the blinds in my office. "Lakeside Community Association. Pull what you can, board members, financials, legal filings, all of it." There was a pause, the faint crackle of static. "You still playing the quiet soldier, huh?" Caldwell said, half chuckling. "You always did find trouble where it hides." "This isn't trouble," I said. "It's cleanup, got it. Give me 48 hours. He hung up. Caldwell was ex-CIA turned private security consultant, the kind of guy who could find a Russian passport under a fake HOA's budget. If there was rot under Karen's rule, he'd smell it fast. While he dug, I stayed alert. Cameras up. House locked. But something felt wrong. Like the air itself was heavier. By Wednesday afternoon, it started again. 2 cars idling across the street. Same ones every day. Same faces behind the glass. Surveillance, amateur, but constant. At 5 p.m., as the sky dimmed to amber, Caldwell called back. "You weren't kidding," he said. "Your HOA's not a community group." "It's a front for what?" He exhaled. "Karen Whitfield's the president, right? She's connected to a private management company called Proterra Holdings. On paper, it manages 8 neighborhoods. But dig a layer deeper. It's registered under a shell company in Nevada. Guess who the director is? Who? Karen's brother. A guy with a rap sheet for real estate fraud, tax evasion, and 2 pending lawsuits for embezzlement. And get this. Your HOA's collected over $1.3 million in security and compliance fees in the last year alone. No record of where it went. I rubbed my temple. So the inspectors, yeah, he cut in, not real officers. Hired contractors through another Proterra shell. People with expired security licenses, some with assault charges. You're basically living inside a criminal operation wearing a neighborhood smile. Silence. I stared through the blinds at the quiet street. Sprinklers ticking, dogs barking, porch lights flicking on. It looked normal, peaceful. But every house was a brick in her empire. "Send me everything," I said finally. "Already did," Caldwell replied. "And Harris? Yeah? Be careful. Someone like her, they don't just play dirty. They play final." The call ended. I checked my email, 27 files. Scans, bank statements, hidden wire transfers. It was all there. But one file stopped me cold. A digital receipt from 3 days before my garage incident. Payment, $5,000. Recipient, Lakeside Enforcement Division. Memo. On-site response, 17 Maple Drive. My address. They hadn't just been targeting me by accident. Karen paid to make it happen. That was the moment something in me shifted. Not rage, not yet. Just precision. That focused calm that creeps in when you realize the fight isn't chaos anymore. It's math. I printed every file, tucked them in a folder, and drove to the sheriff's office. Deputy Marks met me at the counter. "Evening. Dan. Heard about the trouble with the HOA." "It's not trouble," I said. "It's crime." I dropped the folder on his desk. "What's this?" he asked, flipping through. Proof that Karen's running a racketeering operation under the HOA's name. Money laundering, fraud, extortion. He scanned the pages, eyes widening. "You're serious?" "I don't joke," I said flatly. "But you might want to be careful who you call about this. I think half the town's bought in." Mark swallowed hard, then nodded. "We'll get the DA looped in." As I turned to leave, he asked, "What are you gonna do, Dan?" I paused at the door. "Me? I'm just gonna wait. Wait for what?" I looked back, for her next mistake. Because now, the game wasn't about defense anymore. It was about exposure. And Karen Whitfield was about to learn what happens when a Navy SEAL fights not with bullets, but with truth. By morning, the storm had already started. When I opened my front door, there were 3 official-looking SUVs parked across the street. Black paint, tinted windows, chrome badges that weren't quite police issue but close enough to fool the neighbors. 2 men stood near my mailbox, clipboards in hand. One of them was filming my property with a body cam. "Good morning, Mr. Harris," one called, his voice sharp and rehearsed. "We're with Lakeside Compliance Enforcement. We received reports of property code violations, unauthorized surveillance equipment, unapproved exterior modifications, and threatening behavior toward HOA personnel." I almost laughed. "You mean the cameras I installed after your fake cops tried to assault me?" The man didn't flinch. "Sir, please refrain from interference. We're recording for legal documentation." That phrase, legal documentation, was Karen's new favorite shield. Every lie wrapped in bureaucracy. Every threat hidden behind a policy number. Emily appeared behind me, still in her robe, eyes red from another sleepless night. "Dan, what are they doing now?" "Building their next narrative," I muttered. "Let them film." I stood silently while they paced the driveway, jotting fake notes. When they left, one of them smirked. "Expect a hearing notice soon, sir. Violations don't disappear just because you intimidate people." Intimidate. That was their keyword, the one they'd feed to law enforcement later. By noon, the notice came. Official HOA summons. Resident Daniel Harris is hereby ordered to attend a disciplinary hearing regarding harassment and obstruction of community officers. Failure to appear will result in fines, lien action, and possible referral to law enforcement. Karen had gone from neighborhood gossip to full-blown dictator. And worse, she was smart enough to hide behind procedure. I called Deputy Marks, but his tone had changed. Dan, I saw the paperwork. Karen's claiming you threatened her officers with a firearm. That's a lie and you know it, I snapped. I've got footage, all of it. I believe you, he said quietly. But you need to understand. She's got city council backing now. Half of them live in her developments. She's turning this into a political thing. Politics? I repeated. They pointed guns at my wife, he sighed. She's saying those weren't her men. She's distancing herself from the incident and painting you as unstable. PTSD, aggression, paranoia, that's the angle. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then Mark said, "They're setting you up, Dan. Don't give them what they want." That night, a news van parked outside our neighborhood. I stepped out to see a young reporter rehearsing her lines. Former Navy SEAL accused of threatening HOA workers during property dispute. That was it, the first public strike. The story wasn't mine anymore. It was hers. Emily gripped my arm. "They're destroying us." I took a breath, steadying my voice. "No, they're trying to." But she was right. Karen wasn't just fighting for control of a neighborhood anymore. She was fighting to bury me alive in headlines and court orders. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email, not to the sheriff this time, but to the state's attorney's office. Attached every file Caldwell sent. Added the footage of the enforcers attacking Emily. Then I included one last note. If anything happens to me or my family, this evidence goes public. It wasn't a threat. It was insurance. Because Karen Whitfield had made one fatal mistake. She thought she could use paperwork to win a war. But I'd spent my life studying wars. And the first rule was always the same. You can't control what you can't intimidate. And I was done being intimidated. So I waited again. Patient, watchful, and certain of one thing. Karen wasn't finished. But neither was I. By the next morning, Karen wasn't hiding anymore. She wanted a show. I woke up to sirens, not distant ones, but right outside. Flashing red and blue lights danced through our bedroom blinds like a warning flare. Emily rushed to the window. "Dan! They're here again." I pulled on my jeans and t-shirt, already feeling the tension rising in my chest. This time, it wasn't Karen's fake HOA enforcers. It was real county police. 3 cruisers lined the street, and behind them, a cluster of HOA board members stood smirking like spectators at a circus. I walked out onto the porch before they could knock. The officer in front, tall, lean, late 30s, had that tight, bureaucratic posture that screamed, "Not my decision, just my job." "Daniel Harris?" he called. "That's me," he nodded, reading off a tablet. "We've received multiple complaints of threats, illegal surveillance, and obstruction of HOA operations. We're here to conduct a welfare check and assess potential community safety risks." Behind him, Karen stepped forward, all fake concern and perfect posture. She had sunglasses perched on her head, clipboard in hand, and that smug little smile she wore like armor. "Officers," she said sweetly, "we just want to make sure everyone in this neighborhood feels safe." Emily came out beside me, her voice shaking. "Safe? You sent fake cops after me." "You're the one, ma'am," the officer interrupted, raising a hand. "Please let me handle this." I could see the trap forming. Karen had orchestrated every angle. Get law enforcement involved, provoke us into anger, let the cameras she'd invited do the rest. Because there were cameras, local news again, parked at the corner, microphones, viewers waiting to see the unstable veteran lose it. I forced my voice calm. "You got a warrant?" The officer shook his head. "No, sir. But refusal to cooperate can be noted as obstruction." "Then note it," I said evenly. "You're not stepping foot inside my home without one." Karen's smile faltered, just a little, because I wasn't playing her script this time. They left after 20 tense minutes of back and forth, promising to follow up. The moment the cruisers disappeared, Karen's mask cracked. She glared across the street, shouting, "This isn't over, Harris! You can't hide behind your military badge forever." I turned to her, my voice low, deliberate. "You've got no idea who you're really picking a fight with." Then I walked back inside, leaving her words to rot in the morning air. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was Deputy Marks again, but his tone was different this time. Urgent. "Dan, listen. I just got word from up the chain. The governor's office wants this situation kept quiet. You're not just dealing with an HOA anymore." I frowned. "What does the governor have to do with this?" There was a pause. "Karen's husband, he's a major donor. She's been funneling contracts through the HOA for development bids tied to state projects. You weren't supposed to find that out. It hit me like a punch. Everything made sense now. The fake cops, the media coverage, the smear campaign. I wasn't just fighting a petty neighborhood tyrant. I was threatening a machine. Mark sighed. You need to get out, Dan. Lay low for a bit. Can't, I said flatly. They came to my home. They hurt my wife. They think they can weaponize fear. Dan, don't do anything stupid. I ended the call, because it wasn't about fear anymore. It was about principle, the kind they don't teach in offices or council chambers. I stood by the window, watching Karen across the street, talking animatedly into her phone, laughing with her little entourage. The kind of laugh people have when they think they've already won. And that's when I felt it. That calm, burning focus that used to come before a mission, the kind where everything slows down and every move becomes deliberate. Karen thought she could destroy me with lies, but lies only work when the truth stays silent. And I was done being silent. By evening, the quiet suburban street had turned into enemy territory. Neighbors peeked from windows. HOA patrol cars prowled past my driveway like sharks. Karen thought she'd broken me that morning, but I wasn't planning on breaking. I was planning on finishing this. I sat in my garage, the same one she tried to weaponize against me, lights dim, laptop open, phone recording. Beside me, Emily leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. She'd swapped her gardening gloves for calm determination. Dan, she said softly, whatever you're planning, make sure you don't become what they think you are. I met her eyes. I'm not planning revenge. I'm planning proof, she nodded. She knew that look. The one I wore before missions overseas. Cold, focused, calculated. I spent the next 3 hours setting up every camera, drone, and sensor I owned. Every motion alert calibrated. Every light switch linked to my system. If Karen wanted another incident, she was going to walk into her own public trial. Then I called Deputy Marks. Meet me tomorrow at 800, I said. Bring a body cam and an open mind. He hesitated. Dan, you're scaring me, man. Good, I said. Fear's the only language they understand. Morning came sharp and still. The air felt electric. Emily brewed coffee in silence, glancing out the window every few seconds. At exactly 8:05, a convoy rolled up. Karen, in her prim yellow blazer, flanked by her fake inspectors, swaggered across my lawn like she was about to deliver divine judgment. Behind her, 2 real officers, Marks among them, watched warily. Mr. Harris, Karen called out, you're in violation of multiple safety ordinances. We're here to conduct a formal inspection under Section 8A, I smiled. Funny. I checked. Section 8A doesn't exist. Her face froze for a heartbeat before twisting into that brittle HOA smile. Sir, if you refuse, we'll have to escalate. I stepped aside. By all means, come in. Everything's recorded. She blinked, just once. But it was enough. Because bullies don't know how to react when their prey opens the door. Inside, every inch of the living room was wired. Cameras rolled from every corner. Mark stood near the entry, scanning the setup, realization dawning. Karen, I said evenly, I'd like you to repeat what you said last week, about your governor friend who handles people like me. Her smile wavered. That was, a misunderstanding. Oh, I think it was pretty clear, I said, pulling up my tablet. A video filled the screen. Her, 2 days ago, at a private HOA board meeting, bragging about her political insurance. Mark's jaw tightened. One of the officers beside him muttered, Is that real? Karen's voice rose, shaky but defiant. You can't record me without it's my property, I interrupted, and you came uninvited. Then I hit the second video. The fake cops. The staged assault. The HOA security payments funneled into shell accounts, all neatly organized, time-stamped, geotagged. Marks looked at her, horror replacing neutrality. Karen, what the hell is this? Her face drained of color. That's fabricated? Tell that to the state auditor, I said. He's watching this live stream. Her head whipped toward the door. That's when she noticed the black SUV across the street. Camera crew, satellite uplink. Not news. State investigators. Karen stumbled back, breath shallow, panic cracking through her polished voice. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just gave you the microphone. For the first time, she had no words. The woman who weaponized rules, neighbors, and fear, silenced by her own arrogance. Marks nodded slowly. Dan, looks like you just saved us a year of paperwork. I turned to him. You wanted truth. There it is. Karen was escorted out minutes later. No cuffs, not yet. But the cameras caught everything. And for once, she didn't look like an authority figure. She looked small, As the cruisers pulled away, Emily stepped beside me. So, that's it? I looked out at the quiet street, the one she'd ruled like a petty kingdom. No, I said softly. That's just the start. Because when people like Karen fall, they don't fall alone. They pull down everything they built and everyone who helped them, and I was going to make sure of it. The next 48 hours felt like watching a dam break in slow motion. By noon the following day, half the neighborhood knew something had happened. By sunset, everyone knew. The HOA group chat, the same one Karen used to micromanage fence colors and trash bins, had turned into a wildfire of rumors. Screenshots of her arrest, photos of the black SUV, speculation about missing funds, bribes, fake permits, and my favorite one, a picture of her walking out in handcuffs with the caption, HOA Queen Dethroned. Emily watched from her phone, smirking. You realize you've started a suburban revolution, right? I shrugged. About time someone did. But underneath the humor, something darker was brewing. Because corruption never dies quietly, and I had a feeling Karen's connections went higher than any HOA handbook. That night, Deputy Marks showed up at my door again. No uniform this time, just jeans and a grim face. Dan, you might want to see this, he said, setting his phone on the table. It was a video, local news coverage. The reporter stood in front of the HOA's office building, microphones flashing. And according to state auditors, over $400,000 in development grants are unaccounted for, believed to be funneled into private accounts tied to Governor Harold Keene's campaign contributors. I froze. The governor? Marks nodded. Yeah, turns out your neighbor wasn't bluffing. Karen really was working with him, or at least with people close to him. Emily leaned forward. How deep does this go? Marks sighed. Too deep. She's singing to save herself, giving them everyone's names. But he hesitated. But what? I asked. She told investigators you were part of it. The words hit harder than any punch. Excuse me? Marks held up his hands. She's claiming you were paid off to help hide the money, that you used your security setup to delete evidence. I laughed. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief sharpened to a blade. That woman just accused a Navy SEAL of laundering HOA money? Emily slammed her hand on the counter. She's out of her mind! Marks nodded. I know. But the media doesn't. And the governor's office sure as hell doesn't. They're trying to spin it, make it look like a domestic dispute turned conspiracy. So they shoot first, I said quietly, and worry about truth later. By the next morning, 2 news vans parked across from my driveway. Reporters with microphones huddled behind yellow tape, whispering like vultures. Mr. Harris, did you conspire with the HOA? Were you involved in the governor's housing funds? Is it true your wife assaulted an officer? I ignored them, but my silence only fed their headlines. That afternoon, a black sedan pulled up. Not police this time. Federal investigators. The man who stepped out wasn't local. His badge was clean, his posture tighter than the others. Mr. Harris, he said evenly, we need you to come downtown to answer a few questions. Emily reached for my arm, panic flashing. Dan, it's okay, I said softly. They're just questions. But as they led me toward the car, one detail caught my eye, parked just down the block. A familiar face watching through tinted glass. Karen, smiling. Free. The interrogation lasted hours. Questions about my finances, my military contacts, even the surveillance footage I'd shared. By the end, it was clear someone had doctored files. The videos I'd uploaded were tampered with. Mr. Harris, the agent said, we're not accusing you. Yet. But the evidence trail points toward your system. Either you or someone close to you leaked classified footage. I clenched my jaw. There was only one person with that kind of access. Karen had hacked my feed before leaving, and that meant the game wasn't over. It was just moving to a bigger board. That night, I stood in the garage again. The air was still, heavy with unfinished business. Emily appeared in the doorway. You okay? No, I said, staring at the blinking red light on my security terminal. But I will be, she frowned. Dan, what are you thinking? I turned to her, calm, steady, the way I used to be before missions overseas. I'm thinking, I said slowly. It's time I reminded them why people like me don't lose wars. Not even the quiet ones. The next morning, the neighborhood was unnaturally quiet. No sprinklers. No joggers. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. By noon, every local news channel was parked outside the HOA office. Cameras aimed. Reporters whispering about corruption, fake enforcement units, and federal charges. And then I arrived. I didn't sneak in or hide behind statements. I walked straight through the front doors with a hard drive in one hand and every ounce of proof Karen thought she'd erased. Mr. Harris, Are you here to respond to the allegations? Someone shouted. I didn't answer. I just looked at Karen, sitting across the lobby in a tailored blazer, pretending to be calm. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She didn't move. The federal agent who'd interrogated me yesterday stepped forward. Mr. Harris, what's this about? I handed him the drive. The truth, I said. Every unedited feed from my system, every transfer record, and one file you'll want to see first. The governor's private call log. The room went still. Reporters turned. Karen's smile finally cracked. An hour later, the press conference hit every station. The footage played. Her deals, her threats, her fake compliance squads. The governor's voice caught on tape. By evening, arrest warrants were out. Karen was in cuffs. The governor resigned. That night, I stood on my porch, the same one where all this began. Emily leaned against me, quiet, safe. Think it's over? She asked. I looked toward the dark street, the echo of sirens fading in the distance. For them? Yeah, I said. For us? It's just peace, the kind I fought for. And for the first time in years, it actually felt like home.